Thank you very much. I apologize for being late. I was teaching. Yes. So, minorities are for sure a part of the history of Europe, but also the question of minorities is part of the history of Europe. Imperia are heterogeneous. Minorities are the everyday reality, and at least up to the 30 years world, imperial reality was European reality. After there was the Peace of Westphalia and the establishment of national states, imagined homogeneity as a result of institutional, ideological, and cultural work. But then, especially in the 20th century and even more in the 21st century, the combination of processes of the colonization, the Golden 30 and the attraction of the West Europe for immigrants, the fall of communism, neoliberal globalization, all of them collaborated to reinstall in Europe the question of minorities. The populist answer, or populism, is one of the most salient political answers to the question of minorities in the age of globalization. And as my kind presentator put it, today radical right populism could be, I'm not sure whether it's already, but could be a real obstacle for further European integration. Sometimes I know that Kasmude, that is probably the best expert on the field, he considers that the media tend to overreact towards the threat, but still there are some countries in which radical right populism is getting really strong. There are many countries in which it has been part of coalition governments. So first I would like to say, okay, but what we understand as populism. Kasmude provides what he calls a thin definition of populism, understood as an ideology that considers society to be ultimately separated into two homogeneous and antagonist groups, the pure people and the corrupt elite, and which argues that politics should be an expression of the general will of the people. Now, what's the role of minority in this sense? The problem of minorities is that they are considered as being part of an elite conspiration against the real people. I will give you one of the examples, a quote from the Front National, from the French Front National, and they say the immigration is used by the powers of money and the great employers in order to low wages and eliminate the social rights of the French workers. The immigration, it's not a humanist project, it's a weapon in the service of big capital. So this is a kind of conspirative vision in which, and I'm not saying that objectively, many times the role of immigration has been to increase the mass of workers and thus eroding some of the trade unions of trade union strength, even though usually the kind of jobs occupied by migrants are not really competing with the jobs in which the natives tend to work. So minorities are considered as also eroding, as the elites threaten the integrity and the purity of the people, also minorities threaten this integrity. And this is related to the fact that when we speak about the people, we are speaking about at least three different definitions. The people is the nation as a whole, the people is the plebs, the common people as opposed to the elites, and the people is also the an ethno-cultural unity, better maybe expressed by the concept Volk, by the German concept Volk, expressing not the people as the demos, but as the ethnos, and populist movements usually play with the three definitions. They don't use one of them exclusively, but play with the three definitions. Now, I think that I propose to understand populism as divided into two big families: inclusive populism and exclusionary populism. Inclusive populism, which is much more common in South America, is a populism which stresses the idea of the people as the plebs. Exclusionary populism, which is more common in Europe, especially in Western Europe, stresses the idea of the people as an ethno-cultural unity. It doesn't mean that they do not include the other meanings, but they stress the idea of the people as an ethno-national unity, and this is related with what is called nativism, which also, following Mude, is considered one of the main characteristics of exclusionary populism. And nativism is the idea that the nation belongs to the people who were born in the territory, and that any other group is a threat to the group as itself. So nativism means that those who are not natives should be entitled to less rights, to less access, and that at least ideally they should not be here. And radical right populism is one of the main forms that exclusionary populism takes today, and exclusion takes place at three different levels. The first level is the symbolic one. A narrative is put forward by which those minorities are not part of the people. An example could be the case of the Jeanne d'Arc Day that the National Front in France has made one of their most significant public activities. Now, if, as Jean-Marie Le Pen said once, all of us French are the descendants of Jeanne d'Arc, that means that Muslims and Jews can't be real French, because it's obvious that Muslims and Jews can't be the descendants of Jeanne d'Arc, who was symbolic descendants, not biologically descendants. This symbolic exclusion is building the nation, building the people as owning a history to which that minorities can't, almost by definition, make their own. The second way is material exclusion. The most common expression of material exclusion is what is called welfare chauvinism. Welfare chauvinism means the welfare state should be for the true people. One of the examples when the Austrian Freedom Party claimed that the only way to allow, in an age of budget cuts, to allow a generous welfare state is limiting the benefits of the welfare state for true Austrians and not providing them to immigrants or minorities. The third way of exclusion is political exclusion. Political exclusion is there are policies aimed to limit the participation of immigrants of minorities, and usually minorities are now immigrants, in everyday, or sons of immigrants, in the political public space. For example, ban on dual citizenship is one of these ways. Expulsion of certain leadership could be another. Now, there is a link in Europe, in my opinion, between exclusionary populism and the colonial encounter. The colonial encounter, because there exists a strong relationship between the reaffirmation of European distinctiveness vis-à-vis the colonized, we are different from them, and the incorporation of sectors among the popular classes into some form of citizenship. The popular classes are also European, they are different from the colonized, so they can be part of the demos. So the demos was built in a way in opposition to the colonized, and this difference was posited as eternal. Race and nation were considered integral parts of destiny, and the following quote from one of France's more known historians, the 19th century Ernest Renan. He was a historian and a theoretician of the concept of nation, and I quote, "The regeneration of the inferior or degenerate races by the superior races is part of the providential order of things for humanity. With us, the common man is nearly always a déclassé nobleman. His heavy hand is better suited to handling the sword than the menial tool. Nature has made a race of workers, the Chinese race, who have wonderful manual dexterity and almost no sense of honor. Govern them with justice, levying from them, in return for the blessing of such a government, an ample allowance for the conquering race, and they will be satisfied. A race of tillers of the soil, the Negro, treat him with kindness and humanity, and all will be as it should. A race of masters and soldiers, the European race." Now, this is one of France's most famous intellectuals in the 19th century. And this conceptualization of the nation grounds the exclusionary character of contemporary European populism. This racism is part of the exclusionary populist discourse. It's and as one of the researchers on the Italy's Lega Nord, exclusionary populism is based on a notion of the people as both ethnos and demos. There is no demos, no political community without ethnic purity. So minorities can't be part. They are the essential other. In this opposition to the foreigner or the newcomer, and here I relate to the idea of the anxiety that Muslims in a way force Europeans to put to deal with their own with questions they wouldn't want to deal with, but on the other side, to essentialize the other is a way to crystallize the autochthonous group as a unit. Western European populists achieve symbolic internal homogenization through the exclusion of immigrants, non-Europeans and or non-locals, for example, the Blancs Velang towards the Wallons. For exclusionary populism, the people and the nation are one. For example, for the Front National, and I quote, "The community of language, interest, race, memories, and culture where man blossoms, a man is attached by its roots and its depths, its past, heredity, and heritage. And France is ruined by the weight of immigration so massive that denaturalizes the very essence of our people and our way of life." Unquote. Now, this approach to immigration and to minorities is common to every one of the current populist parties, and the fear vis-à-vis immigration is one of the sources of the strength of those populist parties. And the fear of immigration is also related to the erosion of traditional identities such as class identities, for example, with the transformation from the golden 30 to a new kind of capitalism, which is much more high-tech, where traditional jobs disappeared. I will finish a few minutes by giving some examples of how this appears in among different populist parties. The Vlaams Belang, for example, writes, inspired by its consent to defend and protect the cultural identity of the Flemish people, the Vlaams Belang rejects the tenets of the multicultural ideology. It must be made clear to aliens and immigrants in Flanders that they are expected to comply with our laws and also to adapt to our values and to morality, to our habits and to important traditional principles of European civilization. The Danish Evangelical, the Denmark's People's Party establishes, and they do give an answer, the Danish Evangelical Lutheran Church is the church of the Danish people. Christianity has been honored in Denmark for centuries and is an integral part of Danish life. It's impossible to measure the significance Christianity has had and has on Danish life and the Danish way of life. Denmark is not an immigrant country and never has been. Thus, we will not accept transformation to a multi-ethnic society. The Finns Party says ending positive discrimination, lowering the refugee quota, opposition to the planned burden-sharing mechanisms of the common European asylum policy, opposition to using public funds to advance multiculturalism. The Swiss People's Party says that limiting immigration will afford us a livable and unimpaired Switzerland. As an employee, less wage pressure and less crowding on the labor market. As an unemployed person, increased chances on the labor market compared to cheap foreign worker. As a commuter, less congested roads and trains. As a tenant, more affordable housing. As a citizen, more security and the certainty that abuses will not be tolerated. The Freedom Party in the Netherlands has launched a website. It's related to what Dr. Vago commented, a website named Reporting Center on Central and East European, which receives complaints about Central and East European immigrants in Netherlands. And this is what appears in the site. Do you have problems with people from Central and Eastern Europe? Have you lost your job to a Pole, a Bulgarian, a Romanian, or another East European? We want to know. Okay, so those are just some examples, and I'm short of time, so those are some examples. The main problem is that the answer of non-populist parties has been an answer that does not take into account some of the main anxieties and problems that strengthen the populist answer. The main answer is an answer which is individualistic, doesn't take into account the importance of identity, and presents or proposes a Schumpeterian view of democracy as a democracy of elites, putting procedures over popular participation. Insofar as the radical right populist answer are the only ones who are claiming for themselves the democratic idea of popular sovereignty, they will continue to increase their strength because they are the traditional parties do not take into account the real motives by which people are supporting those parties or part of the real motives. A liberal individualistic response to radical right populism may be the wrong answer.
Thank you so much.
I don't think so. I do think that Kasmude could be right in claiming that there is an interest in making the developed era stronger, because it could be claimed that, okay, in the face of this growing threat, deepening European integration is the only alternative. But from here to say that this is one of the main models, I'm not sure, and also because it could backfire. It could backfire, and I think that Greece could be an example on how this backfires. So it could be like playing with Greece or some of the referenda that took place in Europe since the beginning of the European integration, and where the no was stronger than the yes. So I think it could be problematic.
Oh, thank you so much. Is there another question? This is not the case. I'm thankful for that because otherwise